First item is our Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success. Our next item is approval of the agenda. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, guys. Any discussion on the agenda? Not, I'll call for the vote. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm not sure where to hit to vote. I don't see anything to hit.
Jeff, can you log out of electronic school board and log back in?
I don't want to do that, but I will. Okay.
Someone's waiting in the lobby.
We're all weird at teams.
Okay, I'm back in.
Can you log out of ESB and back in, Jeff?
I shut everything off and then okay, I'll try something else here.
Fish is trying something here too.
Sorry about this.
All right. This is the joys of remote meetings.
Can you say what his vote is?
Yeah, can you give us a voice vote? We can keep going.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next item is a public forum. I know there's nobody from the public, so we'll move on to MTSS presentation from Miss Darcy Love. You're up.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me tonight. I'm gonna share my screen here with you. So hopefully you can see my PowerPoint.
Can you switch screens, Darcy? We're seeing your presenter slide instead of
The presentation view. Yeah, let me do it this way. Okay, now I should be able to do it. All right, can you see it now?
Yep.
Oh, all right, great. Okay, so my presentation tonight was about MTSS, but before we kind of get started with that, just thinking a little bit about why do we go to school? What is the purpose that we serve? Why do kids come to school? And so really it's a matter of what goes into creating students who are going to be self-sufficient adults who go on to live happy, healthy, and purposeful lives, and then make contributions as members of a community and a society. And so what exactly goes into that? And so oftentimes we talk about all of the things that go into that in terms of the academic side. So we talk about, you know, our reading programs, our math programs, and all of that. And really what a multi-tiered system of support is about is not only the academic side, but also looking at that social and emotional or the behavior side of things. And so we often, again, talk about the academic piece. And so tonight I wanted to share with you a little bit of the other side of that system, looking at more of what we do to help develop our learners, again, to be, you know, self-sufficient, happy, healthy, and go on to live purposeful lives. So these are two plants that are both in my house. One you can see is doing very well, and you can't see that in that middle one, there's actually some happy little plants starting to grow new sprouts. The one on the other side, however, is not so happy. It sits by our fireplace, so it's too hot. I've overwatered it, I've underwatered it, and it probably should be up for adoption at this point. So I have not been able to create a supportive, healthy, nurturing environment for that plant. And so when we think about it in those terms for our students, what goes into a supportive, healthy, and nurturing environment for our students? And that's really looking at having really secure relationships where they have a sense of belonging, respect, and feel safe, having very clear expectations for their behavior and a consistent way to provide adequate structure to apply those things. And then also setting limits for students. And so making sure that they know that their behaviors have a consequence, but then also teaching them better ways to respond to different events or different things that happen to them. And so what complicates this is that that schools have changed in the fact that our students have changed quite a bit. 1 in 4 of our children experience social, emotional, or behavioral needs that interfere with their academic function. So really, when we go back and look at that 2-tiered system, that academic side is really dependent on the behavioral or social emotional side. And so again, I would argue that you know, obviously it's arguably even more important than the academic side is helping to develop our kids' social and emotional health overall. The other interesting thing, if you read a lot of research, the number of suicides in teenagers has went up exorbitantly over the last 10 years. And a lot of people have shared or hypothesized that a lot of that is that sense of belonging. That is such a critical, crucial piece of what schools provide for our kids. I went to a speaker one time and they talked about how 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even longer, every member of the household always had a role. And so if you lived on a farm, your chores might be to get up in the morning and go milk the cows. And so without you there, then your family wouldn't have milk or wouldn't have some piece. They contributed to the family. And so really trying to give students that sense of belonging, that if they were gone, we would miss them, that we need them here. And so really that's what our social and emotional program here at Parkside focuses on, is that tier 1, creating an environment where they feel safe and supported, looking at how we can prevent problems from emerging, promoting enhancing and optimizing success. And again, that solid foundation that enables our interventions to work better, but also for our students to learn and grow. And then also having a system, again, where we can provide those interventions and supports to get them where we want them to be if they do struggle with those social and emotional needs. And so again, tonight, what I'd like to do is just walk you through a little bit about where we are at in our program at Parkside with social and emotional development. I often talk to our staff about investing. And so you can think of this even from your own financial viewpoint. So when I think about my money, I can spend it, which means that I spend it and it's gone, or I can invest it where I will have a return on my money. So I put money in and then I get something out. And so when you look at the reactive side, that is just spending. We're going to spend it regardless, but then how do we want to invest that time? And we want to be thinking about how we can be proactive in that regard, how we can prevent issues before they arise. And so to do that, we look at promoting students' social, emotional, and behavioral well-being. And so really two areas that we talk about is, creating that environment that we talked about, and then also teaching them core skills that they are going to need. So tier one, again, is preventative, and it's to build that solid foundation and develop a common language for our students. And so if you think about this like building a house, that first tier and that foundation of your home is critical and essential to a long lasting structure. And so it's important that it's really solid. And so one of the key pieces of our tier one is our PBIS program, or Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. We call it Tiger Pride. But this is teaching, modeling, and reinforcing common behavioral expectations to create a healthy, supportive environment. And so we do this in a number of ways. And so I think I shared in my board report a little bit about our Tiger Pride matrix. And so all of our students, the first 20 days and then continuing on, we continue to reinforce these. But we teach all students how to be respectful, responsible, and safe in our school, and how to do that in the hallway, how to do that in the bathroom, how to do that on the playground, in the cafeteria, on the bus, and in the classroom. And so when you come into the building, if you ask a student, how do you show your Tiger Pride? Our students would be able to tell you by being respectful, responsible, and safe. Then again, these are all examples of what that looks like. They're called Tiger Pride passports. So each classroom gets a sticker for demonstrating that they have met these requirements, or teaching they can demonstrate these things. And then they fill up their passport and they get this cute little picture. It's adorable. We do Tiger tickets. So when we see students showing Tiger Pride, they get a Tiger ticket, and we have weekly drawings where they can get different things. We have signage throughout the building that helps promote these things. We also have a number of books that help teach these expected behaviors. One of those books is called Listening Larry, or Whole Body Listening Larry. So all of our teachers have this book, and we have visuals that support it. So we read the book, we talk about it, we model, what does it look like, what does it sound like, and we remind students often of this. One of the other components of our foundation, or of our tier one, is the zones of regulation. And so when we think about the zones of regulation, we think about that quote that says, life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. And so, excuse me, when we're mad, sad, frustrated, it's really about, one, recognizing what we're feeling, and then two, what do we have in our toolbox to manage that. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a situation where you've been angry and somebody says, calm down. And that's almost infuriating. And so really what we're trying to do is to get a student to recognize, before somebody has to tell them to calm down, which of these zones they're in, and then how we can help them overcome that. And so we talk to kids a lot about what's in your toolbox. So if you are angry over here, you know, is it some kids like to breathe, some kids need to go get a drink of water, some need to ask for a break, and even to just ask for help. That's a skill in itself, to say, I'm really mad, can somebody help me? And when they're sad, why is it that they're sad? What other supports can we provide them? How can they, what kind of sad are they? But we talk a lot about these zones. A lot of our teachers start the day this way. A lot of our kiddos come to school in some of these zones where we would like them to get to the green zone, but it's okay to be in the blue zone. It's okay to be in the red zone. It's okay to be in the yellow zone, but we have to make sure that we're using our toolbox to manage those emotions. And so, and I think I've shared this with you before, but oftentimes you talk to some of our youngest learners and you say, you know, is it okay to be mad? No. Or do you think that Mrs. Love gets mad? No. And so just normalizing that everybody has feelings, and everybody, and it's okay to feel any of those things. But what's really important is what's in our toolbox to help manage and control those feelings. And then this is really exciting. We were approved by the Pride in the Tiger Foundation grant to purchase the Second Step program, which will have lessons that we'll teach in each grade level. And this will be a K through 8 program, but we'll teach skills for learning, look at empathy and how to develop that. There will be lessons in that regard. Emotion management and problem solving. And so you can kind of see the progression of what that looks like in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then there's obviously 3 through 8 as well, that all build on each other. So then we move to tier 2, which is when some of our students struggle with some of those things that we just talked about, or struggle with that foundation. We need to look at how we can either reteach, give them incentive, however we can provide them more support to help correct that behavior that we're seeing. And so oftentimes, and again, kind of an old school thought is that, well, we'll just need to tell them to behave, or if we give them enough consequences, they'll eventually behave, or if we give them the right incentives, they'll do what we want them to do, right? And so this is really interesting. I'm going to share a short little video with you, perhaps, if it works okay. Can you see the video?
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Killen. I have my own medical practice, and I've been using Doodly now for a few weeks.
Hey, it's me, Destin. Welcome back to Smart Irving.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike like you can anymore. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill, and I was really proud of it. Everything changed, though, when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses. They like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle, and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike, ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Destin Salem. First attempt riding the bicycle. So, faster I go, the better. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know.
And so something to think about here is that it doesn't matter how many times, if I were to tell that guy if you can ride that bike all the way across the floor, I'll give you $100. That would not have changed the outcome. If I said, if I yelled at him and I said, you need to get this done or you don't get to go home and see your family tonight, that would not have changed the outcome. And so for him, he had an acquisition deficit. He does not possess the skill or that given set of behaviors to be successful. And so anytime we see a problem or a difficulty here at school, it's one of two things. Either they can't do it because they don't have the skill or the given set of behaviors, or they have the skill, they just choose not to use it or a won't do situation. And so we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. What does that look like? Which student is that, and how can we best support them? So that really guides what those interventions would look like for the student, is identifying what the acquisition deficit is or what the performance deficit is. And so at the school level, these are some of the interventions that we put in place. We use what we call social stories. So we read and we review these with students, we discuss them, we reinforce those skills. A lot of times this is just a generic one, but we'll customize that and we'll say, the student's name in there specifically, and we'll actually put a picture of them because it becomes more personalized. We also do what's called a check-in, check-out. So if a student is having difficulty with, say, following directions, we would put in place this check-in, check-out with a visual schedule. So at each of these times, the student would check in with the teacher after playtime. So if their goal again was to follow directions, they would get one of those faces. And so if you notice there that there are multiple times to check in throughout the day so that our students don't become frustrated and give up. So if they didn't have a good morning, they still have opportunities to turn it around throughout the day. This also helps them self-monitor their own behavior and then provide opportunities to have a check-in and say, okay, so how can we make the next half hour better? What do we need to do? So again, it helps us reteach those skills as needed. It helps students self-monitor their behavior and then continue to work on those goals. And sometimes kids will have a number of goals, but we try to only work on maybe 2 to 3 at the most at one time. And then we also have a lot of small group social skills. So if we have a whole group of kids who are having difficulty on the bus, we might bring them together. Or if there's a group of kids that are having difficulty being kind to each other and making friends, we would bring them together. And so, that is identified through looking at, teachers might come to us and say, these 3 have constantly been fighting on the playground. So these small group opportunities provide opportunities for these kiddos to learn about that skill and then practice it in that small group setting before going back out to the whole group at recess. And then the last tier is tier 3, which is just a few of our students, and it's much more intensive. So here we look at things like possibly Greater Minnesota or any other community-based services, Western mental health, healthcare providers, counseling services. And that's usually after we've done a number of those interventions and it's just not working. And sometimes that will be like a special ed referral as well. And so throughout those tiers, students can go in and out of a tier by through our problem solving team. We look at data, we look at behavior referrals, we look at screening data, we look at intervention data to see where students are at and then determine if they need an intervention, if they need to adjust the intervention, whatever that might look like. We also check for a tier fidelity. So if we're talking about the core, have we spent time with that classroom looking at the zones of regulation? Have we talked about whole body listening? Are there multiple issues in that classroom where we need to go in and support the teacher to reteach some of those expected behaviors? If it's an intervention, are we doing it correctly? Are we giving them an adequate amount of time? And then the next thing we look at is next steps. Do we continue with that intervention? Do we need to modify it? Do we need any additional assessments? That type of thing. And so that is our MTSS system when we look at the behavior side of that system. And this is our statement about our social emotional learning program. At Parkside, we create a positive and safe learning environment by building a community of respectful and responsible learners. What questions do you have?
Thank you, Darcy. Have you been able to adapt and continue the program with our current situation, or?
Yeah, actually we have. We've spent quite a bit of time trying to talk through that and what that looks like. You know, I just talked to Amanda and Gail today, and so we'll get a list of students who we need to check in with, whether that be because of attendance issues or because they're struggling with learn at home. So it's just maybe different skills that we would be reinforcing. And so I think of another learn at home family that they were really struggling with learn at home. And so we've developed visual schedules for them that went home, as well as we use a lot of first then language. So they get a first then board. And so for a student, you would say first math, then a break. So they understand what comes first, and then they know that they get a break after that. So we've developed a lot of those resources that we sent home. We laminated them. They can check things off. So yeah, we've been trying to adapt and figure out ways to utilize those same things, but at home. Gail also does those social emotional learning lessons every week through Seesaw. So they still continue to get that instruction.
Good. Mm-hmm. Any other questions, board? Well, thank you very much, Darcy.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Our next item is the approval of the consent agenda. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Too late, Bill. Any discussion on the consent agenda? If not, I'll call for the vote. Jeff, if it's not working, just voice vote, I guess.
Yes.
Is that gonna work?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Our next item is financials, Mr. Karen. I suppose I should make a motion to approve them first. Sorry, I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, now we'll discuss it. Go ahead, Dion.
Nothing really out of the ordinary. Our food service funds were up, expenditures were up from last month. Last month, we didn't have the September bill, so the September and October bill were both paid on these bills. That's why that seems a little higher this time.
Okay, any other discussion? Not, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Any comments on the treasurer's report, Dion?
No, just considering everything that's going on, our percentages are looking
We're
good.
pretty good. Great, thanks. Board forum, anything from the board? Anybody?
Just the bond oversight committee. I think last meeting I mentioned we do continue to meet. We had a meeting last week. We have another one scheduled for after Thanksgiving. We're continuing to monitor all of the building and minor change orders here and there, but really everything coming together really well.
Good.
And then also I'll be attending the delegate assembly didn't realize I committed to a 2-year term, so if anybody has any proposals they'd like to make, I think it's going to be kind of a crazy legislative session, so I'm just there to really learn and see what they're going to do, but those meetings are coming up. I believe one is Saturday, and then a week later, we actually have the delegate assembly where the items for the Minnesota School Board Association will be voted on.
Very good. Thank you for participating. Anything else? Our next item is just a reminder of our Truth and Taxation meeting is December 7th at 6 p.m. So change your calendars. Our meeting will be at 6 on December 7th. Dion's favorite meeting. Looking forward to it. Administrators report. Jeremy.
Yeah. A few things to update people on today. First one is my report. Talk a little bit about return to learn in there and just an update. So since our last meeting, we had some positive cases. High numbers certainly in the county, as I think everyone's aware. Also, we were seeing an increase in staff cases, both in quarantine and some positives. So we were getting to the point we were really having a hard time covering classrooms with subs. We had a number of classrooms that we didn't have subs available for. That was all those pieces together were the reason we moved into distance learning. Our nurses are still certainly working and monitoring those positive cases and the quarantine and such during this time. So just encouraging people, knowing that the nurses are still around, to keep informing them of positive cases and that sort of thing. Also, the conversation still is around those safety protocols, the social distancing, the masking, frequent hand washing, all those pieces, and how important that is to help us get back into school as soon as we can. Right now, the plan is return on November 30th. We're watching those county numbers and working with public health and still monitoring our internal numbers as much as we can. That's part of the letting the nurses know what's going on so we have an idea what those numbers are still looking like internally. We want to get people back as soon as we can, but we want to make sure we're doing so safely when we do that as well. So we're going to continue to monitor those numbers over the next few days and see where those are doing and make sure we have staffing available and such as well as part of that conversation. The piece that I missed in my board report that I want to make sure I talk about a little bit about tonight too is in the governor's order last week, he mandated a additional 30-minute prep time for teachers. So we're working with the EA on a plan to put that together, have a proposal that we feel is going to work for us. It's going to involve taking so the 2 PLC times we've told teachers that's some additional work time for them. We're going to keep that as part of that time. And then also looking at an additional day each month and taking a full day and trying to find days that line up to other breaks already in the schedule. And then taking those as no student days and giving teachers some additional time with all the extra that's on their plates with work with distance learning and hybrid and all the extra planning and stuff in place. The reason I wanted to mention that tonight is the first date that we're going to look at is November 25th. It's the day before Thanksgiving. Right now that's scheduled as a half a student day. So looking at making that a full prep day for the teachers. And it meets that requirement from the governor, just working out some final details yet with the EA on all of those. So that communication will come out later this week from the district. Something non-COVID related to kind of excited about. We're continuing to work on our CTE planning and the programming with that. The strategic plan goal for this year is working on those 21st century skills. As part of that conversation last week, we held a meeting with local business and community partners and really talked about needs that exist in the community, what kind of training is needed for this job needs that exist in the community, what kind of training is needed, and maybe what kind of connections we could make with business partners to help implement some additional pieces in our high school programming for our kids. Thinking about the programs that are existing at MayTech with the CNA and the welding and expanding some of those programs is the conversation. So a nice initial start with that. We met with some of the teachers at the high school today that are part of some of those programs and trying to bring them the conversation, and certainly a lot more to come, but wanted to keep you guys in the loop on conversations taking place there. And a lot of really positive feedback from the community members that we had in that initial meeting. Last piece I want to point out in my report was we've talked about snow days as well. Today didn't feel like it, but last week we had some days we were certainly thinking about snow days. The state is encouraging us to use our distance learning plans and those schedules for those days and snow days this year. So while we still have e-learning it's still a plan that exists, with everything we're doing with e-learning and the schedules we already have in place, or excuse me, with distance learning, the schedules we have in place, we'd like to just keep consistency for families. So on a, if we have an inclement weather day, it would run just like a distance learning day. So just like kids have now, that schedule would be the same on a snow day for them as what it looks like right now. Certainly it could still be late starts and early outs like we've had in the past. Just the snow day itself would run much differently than it has with the electronic things all as options. The next one is Tiffany's early childhood report. She talks about early childhood classes for winter and spring. They've been submitted for the upcoming community services brochure. Adding some new classes. She's planning on using in the new edition with the new winter, spring pieces moving in there for an early childhood class that take place down in that wing. And they were planning on moving into that area this week. I'm not sure that's happening right now with all the changes, but they will still be moving in there in the near future and plan to use that space for some of the family education classes. She also mentions in there with that addition, just how excited they are about seeing that coming together. Furniture is supposed to arrive today. I'm looking at you because we haven't talked since then. So arrived today, make that past tense now. Looking at also doing a staff tour, probably going to be a virtual tour of that site, so we can share that out with people too and show off that new site, but you're going to do it virtually. So we'll work with Studio One probably and create some videos on that to give some tours of that building. West Side is in a little different situation with distance learning than other schools because they had the couple weeks of distance learning previously. So they're kind of reflecting back on what worked and what didn't work the first round and making some refinements for this time. So Peter talks about that in his report, some positive feedback on how the first round went. As they're looking at the second round, they're trying to improve on just some small things like small group sessions and how that works. So really maintaining a similar schedule for the kids so the small groups can happen at the same times they're supposed to happen when they're in the classrooms. He also talks about their PBIS program. They did their first Tiger Traits Assembly on Friday, so they had the awards thing for kids that were meeting some of those pieces. That was on Friday, November 6th. And trying to find some things that we can do that meet all the COVID restrictions. Just those things feel different right now too. Peter did a hide and seek game around the school with the students and him and that. So some fun things they found in there where they can keep socially distanced. So some positive things at Westside. Middle school talked about a student physical challenge that they're implementing. Some body breaks, challenging students for a variety of time and activities. It's over a number of different days, providing motivation for students to be healthy and active. Just knowing that as we're sitting on the screen more, wanting to make sure some of those extra movement activities are available for students as well. They're hoping to provide the activity working on physical fitness, but also impacting positive mental health and brain activities. She also talked Mary Kay also talked in her report about the distance learning schedule for the middle school. So really they're following the same schedule they're using during the hybrid learning. And that started last Friday. And then the kids have it's easier to follow when the schedules stay the same. So that's working well there. Mary Kay also mentioned in hers, just with all the pieces with COVID symptoms, exposures, positive cases, wanted to call out the adult community and the teamwork that's taking place and how pleased she is with that at her site too. High school, Brian talks about the end of the quarter and some grading. He's been sharing 3-week grading period reports with us. Certainly at week 3, there were some concerns, and in his report, he mentions how the different things they did in place, interventions they had in place, such as guided study time on the face-to-face days that took place, how that really helped improve. And by the end of the quarter, they saw a lot of improvement in student performance. Also mentions in his report, we took the spring ACT test just now here in October. So that was postponed because of COVID last spring, but the district-wide test took place in October. That was interesting as well. We had to do it in the gym and set tables up so each kid had their own table. We took every folding table we had in the district plus the armory and filled the gym with tables to make that happen. So there's a lot of work on custodians, and I believe the office staff will help set that up over there as well. But they were able to make that happen, so we get that ACT test taking place. Also mentioned homecoming. That looked different, of course, this year as well. That happened in the final week of October, so the timing was later. We couldn't have a lot of the larger events, but he talks about the coronation, the crowning of King and Queen that did happen. It was outdoors at the SMSU REC, which allowed for 250 students to attend. So that was a nice thing to be able to provide for our students. MayTech, Amanda also talks about end of the quarter. SLT is continuing to meet regularly and just discussing those needs at MayTech and monitoring student progress. working out kind of what's working, what adjustments they can make. She mentioned specifically some changes with lunches and changing some of that scheduling for the start of the new quarter. Also looking at social distancing and making sure that's all, monitoring those throughout those students that are really in school face to face all the time. They have been until we're in distance learning right now. Amanda also mentions Project Success in hers that'll officially up and running, or it was before we moved into distance learning. Working with Emily Carroll, who's coordinating that program this year. She's really worked hard, and she was able to fill all the positions for the classrooms. There was also a busing taking place with Southwest coaches. The plan is to continue to run Project Success after school when we're both in hybrid and face-to-face. During distance learning, that program is not happening. Activities, Bruce calls out a couple things. He talks about the new huddle camera that was installed in the South Gym at the high school, kind of a cool piece of equipment. It provides teams who are practicing or playing ability to automatically record practice or game, whatever is taking place. It automatically tapes it and then provides some ability to live stream in case we are in Live Studio One there and for a certain event. So camera that's in place and set up and ready to go. It also talks about planning for winter activities. A lot of the planning for that is looking similar to the fall activities. What that looked like with the spectator guidelines, they really haven't changed yet from what we had for fall. So looking at limited visitors at different events, probably looking at 2 passes per participant like it was for fall activities. In special ed, Jackie calls out, just explains a little bit about the programming we're doing for some of our higher needs students, the students with the most significant needs. These looking really at students where the needs are to the point that in distance learning, it's really hard to provide the service remotely, bringing some of those students back in. So that started today at all sites. We're bringing a small number of students in, and we have staff available on site, and of course the lunches and everything that goes with that taking place, and that worked well today to be able to provide those services to all of our most at-risk students. Teachers were a big part of the planning in that as well, and she calls that out too. Just very grateful for their dedication, their can-do attitudes with that, because it was a big challenge to put some of that together and how that looks different. But want to make sure we're doing what's best for all of the kids. So. Beth's report, Director of Teaching and Learning, she talks about virtual conferences took place or are taking place at schools. It's been over the last couple of weeks. So instead of the face-to-face, we moved to all virtual just to try and keep additional visitors and such in the classroom with everything that's going on, try and keep that out. That is working really well. So we're setting up Teams meetings for a lot of parents. Some have done phone calls, but parent-student connectors was probably the group we were most concerned about going into it. Talking to them about how well is that going to work to do translation services over the computer. The parent-student connector said we really wanted to try that. We feel we can do that because they've done, they were more at ease with it than I was when we were talking about it. And at the end of that first couple nights of conferences, they said that worked really well. They actually really prefer that to doing the face-to-face because they can shut the camera and the microphone off and it's time to move to the next one, and they can stay much more on schedule than getting caught in the hallway or having to run from one building to another or something like that. So they were really pleased with how that worked. So it was very positive that we found a way to make that happen. Beth also calls out, we had a parent advisory committee or a community advisory committee. This is a group that met last week for the first time. We had a number of people attend. I mean, it's some really good feedback. This quarter, we talked about our world's best workforce plan and got input on that as we're setting some of those goals and such in the upcoming plan. We'll have a couple additional meetings this year where we will look at graduation requirements of the conversation taking place at the high school. We'll talk about that CTE programming. Title I and Title III both have a parent or community input component of that. So this committee will look at those later on in the year. Technology plan and of course construction updates too. Something a little more exciting than World's Best Workforce Planning, but really good committee of people, and I'm very happy to have them involved in these conversations, giving us feedback on that. Dion, you're next.
We're in just a couple of updates. The key card that we use, the rebate, runs from September to August. We qualified for a little over $14,000 in rebates on that. Just want to thank Carla, who really pushes to use that card with the rebates we get, and all of our staff to do that. United Way, Jeremy and I had a conversation about continuing with the United Way campaign, even though there's a lot of financial stress on a lot of people right now, but it's a very important thing for our district and how they contribute back to us. So that is getting rolled out today and tomorrow. Preston with the city had shared the irrigation system. As you know, the high school is hooked up to the pond now. He had estimated that if we were going through city water to water those fields, so they've been combined for the city and district about $55,000. Our school cost just for electricity, because we go through the pond, was only $2,300. So quite a savings there for using that pond now for a few years. A few project updates. I'll give a little more detail on the construction updates in a little bit. Continue to meet weekly with ICS on our indoor air quality projects that we'll have at the middle school and Parkside. Last week, Jason Anderson, Amanda Beckler, and Scott Vandermillen and I met with the Southwest Regional Development Commission on our letter of intent to get that bike trail extended from C Street to Southview for that NDOT grant. We went through that. We're still waiting to hear back from them. And as soon as we hear back, we'll fill out the full application, which is due in January for that. And then Todd and some others are currently researching our phone system. The phone system is a little over 15 years old, and it's definitely in need of an update. There's also a couple of laws out there that we have to update our phone systems to meet. We have a group of people meeting tomorrow or Wednesday afternoon. Some of our administrative assistants and office staff to go over some of the phones just to make sure that whatever we choose meets the needs of the district. That's it.
Thank you. Students, I don't know which one of you guys are going to talk, but you have the floor.
So, there were, and then back there was.
Yeah, can you talk louder? Sorry, we didn't catch any of that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. At Parkside, there were conferences at Westside, there were conferences on the 9th and the 12th, and on MayTech, there will be conferences on the 23rd.
And for Parkside, there is a picture retake day and conferences on the 10th and the 12th. Or it happened already.
And in all schools, distance learning started on November 13th and hopefully it'll end in November 30th. The November 6th is the end of the quarter, and November 9th is started for 2, and no schools 26 and 27. And activities are still continued. Winter activities are being postponed. Hopefully they'll be in school soon. So
I hope so. Thanks, you guys. I have a question for Dion. How are people picking up lunches and stuff? How is that going there?
It's going well. So the first day we had 453, which seems low, but in a comparison to the first day we had in the spring last year, we had 351.
Okay.
So it starts out slow. Word of mouth helps. So our first day was 453, and then today we finished a little over 700. So the numbers are going back up, and we'll continue to push out the message that they're available.
Good. Our next item is the first review of policies 801, 802, 805, 807, 809 to 714. Any questions or discussions on those?
I'll just share that these policies look at equal access, obsolete equipment disposition, waste reduction, crisis management, health safety, comfort dogs, and fund balances. So kind of a variety of things this time.
All over the board.
All over the board, yeah. There really aren't any significant changes in any of them, though.
Very good. Our construction update. Are you going to do this, Dion?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little update. Our BOCMET wanted to make sure the whole board kind of gets an update once a month on our construction projects. So at Parkside, the interior is complete now. When I say completed, we still have our punch list items left. Structure project was, I started at the bottom, sorry. The project was to be completed, completed on October 31st. That's not counting the punch lists in which they were, but quite a few punch list items that we're going through, in which they have technically until the end of this week to complete, and they've been working on that. Building inspector has signed off for additional occupancy, so that was very good. Roof work is complete except for the fascia, as school board also had pointed out. The fascia will be worked on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. It should be completed. Brick work is done. That was completed. I believe it was on Friday to finish the 2 pillars. That get that done in order to start working on the security of the doors. And so that is actually going to start getting worked on tomorrow. New clock system and paging system has been installed. The windows, as you guys know, has been complete. There was a new section of the sidewalk that is done, but there will be another section of the sidewalk that we're going to be doing. Hopefully this weekend with the nice weather we have on Wednesday and Thursday. And then there's part of our parking lot that is going to be replaced due to cracking during the construction, but not at our cost. They did do some leveling of the landscaping on the east side. The sod work, we're going to hold off until next spring. Just we want to make sure it takes and not put it down and then have to replace it. As Jeremy had mentioned, we're going to do a video walkthrough thanks to Studio One and Alex's group. Hopefully on Monday the 23rd. Tiffany and Darcy will be there to kind of do a little commentary as we walk through. The furniture, office furniture was delivered today and partially set up. The remainder of the furniture will be delivered on Wednesday. So hopefully have all the classrooms staged at least. We want to have kids in there to be able to videotape as we walk through, but we'll have the room staged to be able to share with the community. Kind of an open house, and then hopefully this summer or fall we'll be able to do an official open house. MayTech and high school, both their security systems have been completed. High school has a couple of punch list items, but otherwise we've done the testing on the security system on both of those sites. The new school, Southview, precast panels are complete. All the structural steel is installed, but about 80% of the roof deck, and they've been working pretty hard on that to get that done and enclosed. The brick crew has started. They've started to install the midnight black brick. That's the bottom brick on the building. And they'll start working on the fascia brick, I believe, next week and the next couple of weeks. Put up the tent heaters in there. We did do a little change on the way the fascia brick's going to look. I think it was a good change. They'll continue to work on the roof system and enclosing the building. They did do some pours on the second floor, and they have done some pouring of the concrete on the first floor, which is pretty cool to see. With that, like Sarah had pointed out, we're doing well on the budgets. This is just the construction contingency, but out of our original 986,000, we still have $773 left of the Southview Elementary construction contingency. And then Parkside MayTech High School, we're very close to being done. And as of last week, we still had a little over 67,000 of the 151,000 contingency money left over. So we're doing well there. I mentioned the furniture at Parkside, furniture at Southview. We've had a couple of meetings. We have another meeting on Thursday with Peter, Amanda, and Innovative Solutions to go over some of the different classrooms. And then tomorrow, we have a meeting with a couple of different playground companies to look at what the playground might look like over at Southview with Amanda and Peter.
How is the schedule? Are they on schedule, ahead, behind?
So Southview, Parks Parkside, hopefully we're done by the end of the week or so. Southview, originally was a June 18th scheduled date. We've, with the help of ICS, have gone through the schedule, and right now estimating, looking at probably middle of July. With that, PESCA has added some additional management supervisors to the project. And I think if you'll see, actually I did a double take today as I was heading over to Parkside, ton of cars over there. We had a pretty good conversation with them about increasing crews, getting back on schedule, and PESCA is very aware of it. They want to be back on schedule just as much as we want them to be. And I feel like they'll be able to make up some of that ground once the building's enclosed, and they'll be able to get different subcontractors in. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that.
I love the pictures we get from the drone.
That is courtesy of Alex in Studio One also.
Great pictures, Alex.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Great. All right. Any other questions? We'll move on to, we got a couple action items. Our first one is approval of the audit report, which we heard from Amanda and Hoffman and Brooks last meeting. So I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thanks, Bill. Any discussion on the audit? Nothing changed, nothing. Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Our next item is the authorization for district administration and designees to post the position of superintendent of schools and conduct the search.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
And that is approved. Anything else, board? If not, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Pat.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
It will.